An important aspect of functional trimming or therapeutic trimming is very sharp hoof knives. Unless we have sharp knives, it's very difficult to do a proper chop of debribing the corium of unhealthy horn or to thin out the margins around the claws, around the lesions. So one of the things is, first of all, we need to have good knives. Good knives are a steel that's easy to sharpen but keeps a long-lasting edge. Here we have two knives. They're the same brand, they're Escolabs, and you can see here that the one is a brand new one here, has a long hook on it, and in my other hand is a modified one that's already been sharpened, that the hook has been adjusted. The long hook comes in the way when we sharpen the knives, and so it's a good idea right from the start to cut these hooks back a little bit, because we don't want them cut out back all the way. We want the hook to be there somewhat, but it's just in the way for sharpening. We do this on a regular aluminum oxide grinder wheel, and it's very easy to do. So when we turn on this grinder, we just take the knife, so now I trimmed the hooks back on these brand new knives to the same as the old one, and we can proceed with sharpening after this. A hoof knife sharpening is an art in itself. There's many different ways to sharpen a knife, but at the end of the day, for the professional trimmer or for the dairy producer that's trying to work on his own lame cows, or the worker on the farm that's trying to have sharp knives, it has to be a simple, effective way. Today we have some very simple wheels available to us. They're rubber wheels with compound in them, with grit in them, and the rubber runs cooler than a regular standard aluminum oxide wheel, so it doesn't heat the metal as much as aluminum oxide wheel would do. We also have two variations here. We have a 6-inch wheel and we have a 7-inch wheel. When we have a small grinder motor, a 6-inch wheel is more than sufficient, but a 7-inch wheel is more effective because sometimes it's harder to navigate the knife if the motor is bigger in the center. Another thing here, the sharpening, is we have the felt wheel. So first, we'll demonstrate this later. First, we're going to create an edge. The felt wheel or the soft cloth wheel will eventually create the polished cutting edge, and it'll take the burr away to create that extremely sharp cutting edge that we require. To make the cloth wheel more effective, we have buffing paste. This is strictly buffing paste that we add on to this, strictly the felt wheel or the cloth wheel, to make the cloth wheel more effective. Let's first look at a couple, three other aspects of knife sharpening before we get to the actual sharpening. When we look at an edge of a knife, a lot of the knives come with a pre-ground edge, as we see on this particular knife. The pre-ground edge is right at about 30 degrees, as I drew in this picture. If we continue that 30-degree edge, that's a very effective edge for cutting because it's strong enough so it doesn't break, but it's flat enough so it makes an easier cut. If we make the knives too steep, it takes a lot more power to cut with that knife. And if we make it too thin, like on the bottom scenario, then we have too thin of an edge, will easily break, especially if we get into sand or if we get into stones or anything like that. So the ideal thing is to have a 30-degree cutting edge. The other thing is, when we sharpen a knife with a round wheel, the bevel, the roundness of the wheel creates a bevel in the knife. That bevel is slightly it's very unnoticeable when we look at the knife, but it's there. And in this case, when we cut with this particular knife, the chip hits here, it slides across, and it hits in the back again. So there is a lot less friction. When the chip has less friction, there's an easier cut. It's a simpler cut. There is less restrictions, so it makes it much easier to cut. So the round wheel, on the one hand, creates that beveled edge. Just like we have a bevel in the whole knife in this direction, the cutting edge with a round wheel will turn out identical. So let's go to knife sharpening. So here we have our felt wheel and our rubber wheel mounted onto a standard bench grinder that we can buy at a hardware store. I recommend to have at least 1/3 to 1/2 horsepower motor to have the power there so it doesn't bog it down too much. Another thing is very important, because we deal with very sharp knives at the end. We want to have the sharpening wheel spinning away from us. So that explains the arrows on the motor here. My switch currently is in the back. When I turn the switch on, my wheels spin away from me. That's a huge important part from safety, because if the knife catches on the wheel when we're trying to do something and the wheel spins away from us, the knife will fly away rather than towards me. Because towards me with that sharp knife would be incredibly dangerous. So that's why we arrange these grinders so they're spinning away from us. Another important thing to have ready for sharpening knives is a little cup of water, because sometimes when we have to change a lot on the edge, we have to be able to cool the blade down in the water so it doesn't overheat. So in between, we can do that. Like we said before, we want about a 30-degree cutting edge. And the most important part when we sharpen knives is to be consistent, to have a consistent edge, to have a consistent move. What I found for myself works best is we have the bench grinder mounted on a table that's relatively level. When we're sharpening here, this is a right-handed knife. We lay the right-handed knife here, we turn on the grinder, and now we come right at about 11 o'clock, which I put a mark across the whole grinder motor here. 11 o'clock will give us that consistent 30-degree edge. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go back and forth with that blade until we get the desired edge. So we can see this is a pre-ground knife. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn the grinder on and create sharpen this knife. Another thing here is that rubber wheel becomes clogged. And a piece of rubber will actually clean that rubber wheel off again, so it's more effective grit. So I start with my knife on the table, nice and flat, and what I do is I bring it up right to my marks up on the grinder, and I steady myself just perfect. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back and forth on that sharpening wheel, nice and flat, consistent. And it's good to apply a little bit of pressure, but go very consistent. So now when I look at this right now, my sharpening wheel, I took the whole edge from the cutting edge all the way to the end of the pre-ground. So this is a good, consistent move and a consistent edge. So once we got that, now we can go on over to the felt wheel, the cloth wheel, and on that cloth wheel, every few knives, we apply just a little bit of buffing paste onto it. And what we're going to do now is we just polish this edge. We get that really polished out. We just have a little bit more to go there. And here we can put a lot of pressure to it. And now we have a slight burr in the back here. Now we flip the knife forward, again pointing the blade away from us. Completely away from us, and very lightly we take that burr off the back. The burr in the back is completely gone now. Now just we make sure that there's not a burr in the front. And now to check the knife, we put it on our fingernail. If it stays on our fingernail, catches our fingernail, the knife is razor sharp and it just stays there without anything. A sharp knife needs protection. A simple way to protect these knives is to use a cut-off milk and inflation and stick it over the top. Now we can do whatever we want with this knife, and the edge, that sharp edge, is always protected. So let's summarize. We all know that sharp knives are essential to do good work. The hook on a knife is not necessary to be as long as it comes with the new knife, so we can trim them back a little bit. Make sure the grinder spins away from us. We use it flat, the knife flat at 11 o'clock on the grinder. We check the edge on our fingernail, not on our finger, and we protect the knife with a milker inflation or with a rubber guard so we don't lose the edge in transport. So let's do a demo of a left-handed knife. So here we've got a right-handed knife in my right hand, which with the right-handed knife the edge is coming down, and in my left hand we got a left-handed knife with the edge coming down. So that's how we differentiate from right-handed and left-handed knives. So again here, with the grinder spinning away from us, we're gonna go right up here at 11 o'clock, and it's best to use a body motion. It's also good to check in between before we completely finish to make sure that we're consistent all the way through the edge. So I'm going to do a couple more strokes here. Okay, we go back over on the felt wheel to buff it, polish it. Flip it over, so it's always important to flip it over so the edge always points away from us. Very slightly in the back to take the burr off and nice and flat. We can also go in the back more in this direction, just very light, because we don't want to round the back edge off. All we want to do is just create that sharp edge, and we've got a very sharp edge on this. Okay, as we get done with it, again, we put it in the inflation and it's ready to go for the rest of the day. So here we have a knife that we sharpened quite a few times and the hook has gotten larger and it needs to be taken back. So what we'll do here is, again with the wheel spinning away from us, we work on the upside. And we're bringing that point back to almost normal again now.